Hey, how's it going, guys? It's me, Jorora. I don't normally do this weird microphone thing that I feel uh, a lot of YouTubers do. I mean, it's cool, it's whatever, but I normally have like a setup, and it's kind of jank right now. So we're gonna just have to be holding this thing. Anyways, I got this camera recently, and I wanted to talk about that for a bit. So as you guys know, I'm working on a couple of video games. I mean, I upload like a lot of the art and the music and some of the gameplay recently. And I realized I don't want to do that too often, but I do want to keep people updated. I do want to be able to talk about the games and like what I'm doing and stuff like that, and update people without necessarily having to show them what I'm doing. Um, I do want to give like little hints and glimpses and like tease stuff, but I definitely don't want to do it to the point where it kind of ruins the fun of the game. Um, and I did think about it for a long time because I do know a lot of people will gain interest in a game from just watching other people play it, which is how I got interested in things like Earthbound, Undertale, etc. But just in case, I know not everyone is like me, and feels that way. And honestly, like I'll just let you guys like vote on it, or gauge, like I'll gauge your opinion based on the comments and like what you want to see. If not, I'll just do this. I'll just talk to you guys. I'll just let you know what's going on. Because I definitely don't want to slow down on like the uploads. I want to keep like some interest and like I guess in a sort of self-serving way, like keep people hooked and interested in what I'm doing. Um, I guess I don't know. Um, but I thought I'd focus today on Liminis, which is currently what I'm calling the game. It's the kind of backroomsy game that you've been seeing. I don't want to say it's completely about like the backrooms. It definitely takes a lot of inspiration from that concept. I think it's been done to death to some degree. Um, and as some like essayists have pointed out, even almost like ruined. And I definitely don't want to do that to that idea, that project, that I guess that sort of for lack of a better word, that kind of artistic movement, right? Right? If we're gonna be like fancy about it or weird about it, I think liminal horror is kind of like a sort of like accidental like art movement. You don't really notice them like when they're happening, but that's kind of what it feels like. A lot of people find it really cool, either for fun, like they'll, I don't know, drop in like skibidi toilet or some shit in like the back rooms, or they're trying to be really artsy about it and like really sophisticated and cool about it. I guess like Kane Pixels, right? And they have like a whole story and plot. And I guess that's kind of what I'm doing. I mean, I don't know. I just want to make a game out of it. I want to make something that's like kind of plays into that sort of sense of like liminality, and but with a unique story. I don't want to, take from like the projects that I've seen a lot, which a lot of them seem to focus on like some sort of like government thing, conspiracy project thing. Which I can't say it's too different from that. There's some elements of sort of stuff like that, but not necessarily quite the same. Um, I still find that stuff cool, right? Like sort of like Black Mesa, sort of like Half Life, shadow government type stuff. I don't know. I've actually never played Half Life, but I do find the characters in Half Life very fascinating. And actually, I want to play Half Life. I'm a little afraid to play it though, because I'm afraid I'll feel a little too inspired by it, a little too like uh like kind of motivated by it, and I might draw a lot from that. So that's one of the few reasons I don't play certain games anymore, just because I'm afraid that I'll draw from them too much. And I certainly do that when I do play them. And I think maybe that's not a bad thing. I mean, as long as you're not just literally like blatantly copying something. But I'm sorry, my hair is in my way. It's like poking my eye. But anyways, the point is, I thought I'd talk about Luminous a little bit. So recently, I've added a little bit of. I've been mostly just fixing like the way it feels. So there's like some lighting, some audio issue, like some asset, like some sound effects, that sort of thing when you're walking. before. There weren't like any real lighting effects, so if you walk into like a shadowy area, you don't get darker or whatever. There's like no shadows on you. You're just kind of like this thing that is constantly glowing the same set of colors no matter what. And so I decided to change that and fix that just to make it feel more immersive, right? Um, Not necessarily realistic. I think there was like a documentary on the creation of like Half-Life, and it's got Gabe Newell talking about the difference between like realism and immersion. A lot of people focus too much on realism and trying to make things like the real world, and that is normally a slippery slope and the wrong idea. Things should feel um, like in the sense that you don't want to make everything literally like the real world. That can take away the fun out of a video game, right? Like ultimately, it's about having fun. So you don't want to make everything too realistic, right? But you also don't want to make it so like you don't want to use it as an excuse to be lazy and then not make the game feel like immersive and that sort of thing. You know, you don't want to use the whole like excuse of like, oh, it's a it's a feature, not a bug or whatever. Or, turn your bugs and your messy work into a sort of like, oh well, it's a video game, like it's not the real world. But there's like there's like a middle ground where everything kind of works perfectly and things make sense. So things have to make sense within the context of like the world you're creating, sort of. So it has to be realistic to the world, not so much to us. And I think that's, I guess, the lesson to be learned from that. I don't even know where the fuck I'm going with this. I tend to rant, so I apologize for that. But anyways, yeah. So Limitless is, as I've hinted at, it's definitely it's a game set in like a lot of sort of liminal worlds. Pretty much you're this kid that like falls into this thing called the maze cube. So you don't necessarily like no clip into like the no back rooms or whatever. You find this object called the maze cube, and what it is, it's like a pocket dimension with like a bunch of like infinite rooms, and inside these rooms there's like a lot of weird creatures and stuff, and I can't say much more than that. There's a whole reason behind that, but I guess that's like my twist on it. It's like it's more like you need like a special key to go in there. I haven't quite explained why, but it can interact with objects in like our world or whatever. Or get like this our dimension or whatever. I don't know. It's the real world. We'll say that. And it can, I guess, swallow things randomly, right? So that you do find like random objects like laying around, that sort of thing. And so I guess that's kind of where that no clip mechanic kind of comes in, but it's not quite literal. It's not you literally like you ran into a wall and then you fell into this place. So that's kind of what I'm saying. Why it's not entirely like completely like the sort of like backrooms lore you hear on the internet. There are some key differences. And I'm not trying to do that. I don't want to limit myself to like trying to explain something like that. I feel like enough people have done that, and that's not quite as unique or interesting for me to work on in that sense, because it would just feel kind of derivative. But I do like some of the concepts, and so I want to play around with them in my own sort of story and world, and may pay homage to some of the things that have already come out. But anyways, but yeah, I mean, I'm still figuring down like how necessarily I want to make it fun. I don't want to make it like quite like a Yume Nikki-esque game or like a quote unquote like walking simulator, which I think someone said that that's kind of a derogatory word for games like LSD Dream Emulator or Yume Nikki, which I agree with that. Like, yeah. But to some degree, yeah. I mean, they do feel like walking simulators. So I definitely don't want to make it feel like that. I do want to have like an element of like a story and like an adventure. Like really make it feel like an adventure game rather than just like you're walking around and like weird things sometimes happen. I do want to be careful into not falling into that pitfall. But also like it would just kind of make the game like kind of like irritating to work because then you have to make these really large grandiose spaces with like not much to do. You just kind of made them fancy so that people don't get bored when they're walking around. So that's a lot of like art and work on its own. But you can cut down on that if you just make a story interesting in some sort of way. Um, so that's kind of where I want to go with that. Obviously, you'll get to see how that'll turn out. Maybe you'll like it, maybe you won't. I don't know. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much that's Luminous. So it's like this dimension that takes your. Oh, that's another fart I forgot to mention. Not fart part. Um, anyways, it takes your memories or at least the player, like the character's memories, and turns them into like liminal space. So that's something it does. It's like any creature or being that goes in there, it'll turn your like memories into spaces, and it focuses on like liminal spaces. So things that you saw once in passing that didn't really pay a lot of attention to. So they feel familiar to you, but not fully. So I can't use like true like core memories, but it uses things that you subconsciously like might remember or vaguely know about. So things like that, which is like what liminality is, right? It's like something you saw once in passing, and when you're there, it feels kind of lonely because you're not really supposed to be there. It's like the place in between A and B, right? Like it's just the place you would take to get to somewhere else, like a dark office hallway, right? That you don't want to stand in the hallway. You just want to get through the hallway so you can go to the, I don't know, your dentist or something. I don't know. Like I said, I do rant a lot, so I apologize. Bear with me. But that's pretty much all I have to say regarding that. But yeah, I'll be uploading more videos. I don't want to like slow down on like uploads and like make people wait like 6 months for something. That I feel like that could kill like interest in that sort of thing. So I know some people do stuff like that. They manage stuff like that, like to be very secretive and that sort of thing. That's a lot of people do that, I feel, but I'm not like that. I don't like being some like person in the shadows that's like very secretive about their video games or their projects, and nothing about this person. Like there's a lot of interesting, like I guess you could say like artists or creators or whatever. Like I don't know why the word artist is like a bad word now, but I honestly think of them that way. I mean, that's what they are. They create art. And I feel like a content creator or person that makes content is a bit different from like an artist. Content is more like income, sort of like it's a financial sort of thing you do. It's more of like, and there's a more sort of, I guess I would say, fight. There's like a process to it that kind of makes you have to research what people are interested in, what kinds of topics. Like it really narrows down like what you can talk about, because you're focusing mostly on things that people will probably want to talk, like listen to or hear about. While I feel like someone that's making an art, they don't expect like a financial gain from what they're working on. Like what they make, people might actually like, but they might not either. They might not even care. They might not even dislike it. They just don't care. They might feel apathetic about it. And I feel like that's what kind of differentiates like an artistic YouTuber from like a content creator. Like content creators are looking for trends. They're looking for things that people will want to keep watching, and that'll generate them like revenue and all that other crap. Which I think is a distinction. It's an important distinction. It's like the difference between like independent like films you find in like niche places and like TV, right? Like sitcoms. Like sitcoms are meant to be made very quickly, very cheaply, with like a lot of episodes. And there's new seasons every year, right? Unlike a really artsy film that took like 3-4 years that may or may not make its money back, right? Like Blade Runner 2049, that sort of thing. So yeah, that sometimes confuses people, that sort of concept. I personally, that's just the way I see things. I think there's a definite, and I think more and more people are starting to agree with that sort of definition of like, there's a difference between like like an artistic sort of person and like a content creator. And like I said, the key difference being one's focusing mostly on creating like, I guess, utilitarian art in a sort of way. Like the purpose of it is a financial gain, and the art can be good maybe, some it normally has to be. But then you have people that make art that is normally like either sometimes it's really abstract or weird. So either way, people might not like it. But I feel like content creators normally will focus on things that are really popular and thus likable, right? Anyways, I don't even know where the fuck I'm going with all that. But if you stuck around long enough to hear all that, then that's on you. So sorry. Anyways, yeah, if you have any questions on Luminous, anything I missed out, anything that you'd think is relevant that you'd like to hear, feel free to ask me in the comments. I will try to answer that as quickly as possible. I will make a separate video, a little more coherent, a little more concise, a little more direct, about the other game that I feel more of you are probably more excited about, which is it's called Hijack, or HIJK. And that's the game you've seen with some of the art of like these like anthropomorphic characters. You have so you might have seen like an iguana guy or a frog girl or like a kid with a mask. So if that's what you're interested in, that's definitely something I'm working with. I'm working on that game with like a team. And we're all in college, so we've had to take a break in between, right? So we can like get back into like full gear. And that game has to be a little more sophisticated, mechanically, in a lot of other ways. While Luminous, it's like mostly a solo thing. And it's more of like, I mean, they're both passion projects, but I feel like Luminous is like more something I feel like it's a lot more niche, while a Hijack, I think a lot more people might enjoy. I think it's more reminiscent of like things like Earthbound, Omori, etc. Or maybe more so, like I've heard some people say that it feels a lot like Lisa or Off, because it is like dystopian. It's literally like a dystopian setting. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll talk about Hijack later, and like I said, I'll be a little more prepared and direct on that one, just because it is a game that does require a little more planning and thought to explain. So anyways, thank you guys for hearing me, I guess, like mouth away and yap, and I'll see you in the next one.